Okay, so now that we've got everything set up here, we've imported our symbols and our brushes, or you've built your own. You've got all the elements for the base cave map put up. Everything's lined up. You are ready now to start building out the walls and the features of the actual cave itself. Before we do that, though, I'm going to do some final little tidy up here as I was looking at the map, just to get everything organized into layers and move a few things out of the way. So the Planum profile text, I don't really need that right now. I'm just going to move this over here, and I'll just keep this line. But I'll scale it down. I'm going to shrink it really small and then move it right over there to get that out of the way. The other thing is the layers. So when I imported the SVG file, it created these layers that really don't make a whole lot of sense. W2D legend. So I'm going to shuffle some things around. First, I'll unlock those. Let's see what the W2D legend is. It's just the scale bar and then the north arrow. So I'm going to move that. I'm just going to select it. Let's see if it'll let me select it. Oh, it doesn't because is it locked? Let's see. Why is it not letting me select that? Oh, I bet I know why. Let's expand it out. So this layer was locked and these were hidden. They're also locked. So let's see. Make sure that we don't have any others that are that same situation. Okay, so those are now unlocked. I should be able to click them. First, I'm going to move this out of the way. Actually, I'll just grab all of these. Let's move them up here. And I'm going to grab this one now. And I believe right there. Let's zoom in a little closer so we can see it better. Okay. So I want everything all the way over to this 20-meter line. There we go. So I've selected that. I'm going to move it off of this W2D legend layer, and I'm going to put it on the text layer, which is where the other compass is at. So I'll just grab that little red spot on the main layer, or the red box, and I'll drag it up here to text. And now it's on the text layer. The other thing I'll do is just to simplify it, I'm going to group it together. So I'll hit Command or Control G, or I can come up here to Object and go to Group, and that will group it together. Now when I grab a hold of it, it moves the entire thing. I don't need two copies. I mean, both of these north arrows and scales are essentially the same, so I'm just going to delete this one off of that layer because I don't really need that. Having two of them, this will be my reference. I'm going to adjust the direction of this later on. But for now, I'm just going to keep that there for reference to make sure that the north arrow is in the right direction and the scale bar is set to what this scale bar is, because this is the accurate one. This is the one I pulled in from Porcupine. Okay, so that is good. And now this one should be empty. So I am going to, maybe just to double check to make sure it is empty, I'm going to turn off all of these layers and these layers, so there is nothing but this layer. Oh wait, wrong one, label. Turn off labels. Now I only have legend, and I'm going to hit Command or Control A on the keyboard. That's select all, or you can probably go up here, somewhere around here. Anyway, Command A, Control A, that'll select all. It's selected nothing, which means that this is empty. And I'm going to delete it because I don't need it anymore. So we'll select the layer, come down here and hit delete. Then let's check these out. So the labels, this is actually the survey stations. So I'm going to change this to survey stations. Let me expand it out and just make sure that it doesn't contain other sublayers. It doesn't, which is great. We'll now turn this one on, the W2D survey. Zoom in here real quick. All right, so this has both got, it looks like, the line plot and the station itself. So if I wanted to move the stations, like this actual point right here, let me show you how you can select just those. So I'm going to click this object right there, and then I'm going to come up here and go to Select, Same, and let's do, let's try fill color. I could do fill color, stroke weight. Stroke weight might be a good one. Let's try it and see what happens. I believe that grabbed just those stations, and I'm going to move those over to the stations layer. So if I grab them and move them and then turn this layer on and off and it gets rid of the line plot, then I have to find a different way to select these rather than using what I just did. So there's that. I'm going to grab that and drag it up here to survey stations. Let's see, and did that work? Oh, there's another object. So there's more than one object. So I'm going to select this one. Let's zoom in. And let's grab, that looks like a really thick. I'm going to turn this back on survey stations. I'm not exactly sure what I just grabbed. Sometimes there's invisibles, and I probably grabbed an invisible, whatever that might be. You know, a shape with no fill and no stroke. So that could be. So I'm going to try this again. We're going to select that. And let's do, I'm assuming this is a really thick border. So let's go to select, same stroke color. And that should have grabbed, oh, it didn't. Let's try it again. So maybe it's not the stroke color. Let's try select, same stroke weight. Nope. Select, same fill color. There we go. Okay, because it's a darker red, so hopefully that distinguished it, or whatever, maybe it's white or something. Okay, let's move that now as well. So I'm going to grab this and move it up to survey stations. Oh, and I grabbed the line plot. Okay, well, let's try a different approach now, because that's not working. I'm going to undo everything that I did here. So let's go back a little ways. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to move the line plot now. So we'll grab the line and say select same fill. No, let's do the same stroke color. I think that should have grabbed all of the different lines on the line plot. And then let's create a new layer. We're going to move this layer up here. We're going to name it line plot. And now I'll grab everything here and drag it up onto the line plot layer. And then let's turn that off. Okay, that's great. So now what I can do, instead of trying to guess on what, if this has got a certain kind of stroke or fill color or stroke weight, I can now just hit Command A to select everything here. And now I'll grab that and put it up on the survey stations layer. And then that should leave these layers completely empty. Well, it does, because I hit Command A, I selected everything and moved it. So now I can get rid of this layer. So we'll click that and delete. And then this layer, I believe, is just the walls and what do they call those? Displays. I think it's a display shot. It's just the left and right, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we'll call that, I double clicked. That's on the wrong part of the layer. So let's call this walls. Actually, I don't want to call it walls because we have another walls layer, and that's the actual walls. So we'll call this SVG walls. There we go. Okay, now let's check it again. So we've got our line plot. There it is. I turn it on and off, and I can see my line. Let's turn these both off, and let's turn on this, not the sketches, the survey stations. And now at the survey stations, we have both the station label and the station itself, which is great, all on its own layer. And that is all tidied up now. So let's turn all the layers back on and lock the layers that we don't want to see moved, which is going to be the line plot, the survey stations. I'm going to turn off the walls. I don't need those anymore. And we'll leave everything else on. So now we're going to go ahead and start sketching out our walls. So I'm going to zoom in here. The keyboard shortcut, again, if you've forgotten, is Command spacebar or Control spacebar held down. You want to hit the spacebar first and then the Control key. Otherwise, if you hit Control and then spacebar, it opens the Spotlight search on a Mac. So spacebar Control. On a PC, it's going to be Control, not Command. So on a Mac, it's Command. On the PC, it's Control. Okay, so we'll do that, and that's how I can zoom in. Then I just drag up or down to zoom in or out, or sort of diagonal. So once I'm zoomed in, now I'm going to grab the pencil tool. I like the pencil tool because remember before when I was using the paintbrush, I do a single stroke and then stop clicking, and then I can't like join the line as I draw the next part of the stroke. So I've got that selected. let's go to the right layer because I want to make sure that whenever I'm working on drawing an object or inserting a symbol that I'm on the right layer. So I'm going to go to the walls layer because that's where I'm going to draw my walls. I've clicked on that. We've grabbed the pencil. I'm going to click this little guy right here, which takes it to default, the white fill and a black stroke. And then I'll click on the white fill and then just click that little none right there. So now it's just a black stroke. And then we'll go ahead and start drawing. So I'm going to draw my line. And if I want to adjust the thickness and properties of my line, I'm going to close that. We're going to go to properties. Or I could go over here to window and then down to stroke. And that'll open my stroke panel, which if I click here, should give me more options for the stroke that I may not see over here when I'm drawing or selecting the stroke. So some things that I can control here are the thickness. Sometimes I like about a 1.5 to 2 point thickness on the line. The other thing is the end cap. So right now you can see it's really sharp edged. If I click this, I can make it more of a rounded edge. And then right there just puts the anchor point. Still has a hard edge, but there's a little bit of a buffer on the end. So I usually do the curved edge, the curved corner, and then that gives it more of a naturalistic look to it. And then when you're drawing things like underline passage, or if I've got these endpoints indicating a lead, I could also do a dashed line. If I click on that, you can set how many points long is the dash and how many points is the gap. And so you can enter those numbers manually, which I'm not going to do right now. This is going to be a solid line. So I got that all set up. And I'm going to actually delete that. And then let's just go ahead and we start tracing over it. So I draw, and then I draw. And to continue this line, I just start back. If I start right here and draw, it creates a separate line. If I start drawing over the top of the old line, then it continues that. So I'll just continue drawing this, and I'm going to trace the entire outline of the cave for my walls. And it's up to you. I mean, this is going to take a little bit of time because I'm zoomed in. I like to make sure I get that detail. I like it to have kind of a bumpy edge to it and not super duper smooth because it just seems more rock-like to me. But you just continue drawing. And let me show you one thing. Let's see. I'm going to actually draw this because this is like the surface entrance. Just so I can show you, I'm going to draw that. That continues that way. Okay, so now if I had this selected, for example, and I come over here and I'm like, oh, well, now I got to draw this part right here. Sometimes what will happen is if you draw like this, this time it didn't happen, but sometimes what it'll do is take this line you've drawn over here, it'll disappear, and it'll think that you're trying to continue the survey over here. If that happens, just hit Control-Z or Command-Z to undo. And then sometimes what I will do is start from here, draw a little segment so that becomes unselected, and then continue it over here so that it doesn't create like that weird issue. So that's something that you can do, and if you have that kind of problem. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and finish tracing over all the walls, and then we'll continue once that's done. So you don't have to sit here and wait for me to draw these walls. All right, now as I've been going through the sketches here, I'm finding a spot where the scan doesn't quite align with the line plot. So I need to make an adjustment. And this is something if you're working from survey notes that both the line plot and the notes were drafted at the same time in the cave, then like I'd mentioned earlier, you might have some lines that were drawn a little bit short or a little bit long. You might have some that the angle is just slightly off. And so when that happens, as you're drawing along, you're going to need to continually adjust. Usually you're rotating or scaling your sketches so that they line up with the line plot that you imported from Compass in the SVG file. So let me show you how you do that as you're going along. So I'm going to come over here to my layers now. Remember, I locked the, let's see, it was the sketches. So I didn't accidentally grab that as I'm as I'm moving along and then move it. So I'm going to need to find out which sketch is the right sketch here. So I'm going to unlock those. And looks like that's one of them. Let's see. If I move this down. So I nudged it down so it lined up with the line plot. And there's another one in there too. Let's find out which that one is. Is it this one? Looks like it is. So let's grab this one. And I will, actually that was one I just grabbed, isn't it? Okay. Actually what I'm going to do is turn this off. So I moved that one. Now we're going to select that one, which I think is this. We'll move it down just a little. And it looks like there may actually be even one more. So let's turn that one off, and I'll click over here. Let me zoom out. Oh, that's the one here. There's just a little bit of overlap. Okay, which is fine. Although that one also needs to be nudged just a little bit down to line up better with those. Okay, there we go. So if you needed to rotate it, like let's say that this isn't a print off of the line plot that I sketched on top of, but let's say that it's a hand-drawn line and the line actually goes off this direction, so I need to rotate my sketch so that it lines up with the actual survey line. I'm going to zoom out. I can zoom in just a little bit here. And what I'll do is just hover over the corner, and you see how I get those little curvy arrows? And that allows me to then rotate this sketch. And then once I rotate it, I'll click it and drag it up and line it up with that line plot. If I need to scale it, I can click here, hold the Shift key down so that it constrains the proportions, and I can scale it down or up just a little bit so that this segment aligns with the actual SVG line plot that I imported. And then once that's rotated, then I'll just continue my sketch, which is a little bit tedious because I'll continue my sketch, and then I might get to the end of this segment and the line veers off. So now I got to rotate it again. And so you're going to do some fudging in between as well, because it's not going to look exactly the way you drew. You may have to like guess on little segments in between to fill that in. So anyway, I just wanted to pause and show you how I do that because I didn't mention that earlier. One other thing I need to mention, I sort of alluded to this earlier, but I didn't go into a lot of detail. I said that I like the walls to be kind of a little bit bumpy. If you were to zoom in really close here and draw your line, whoops, let's come back over here. It's going to take me forever to get from one side of the screen to the other, but I'm going to get all these little like bumps and knobs and everything like that. So if you want that, great. The more you zoom out, so if I zoom out really far, I can go a lot faster, but my line, you'll see, is going to be much smoother, so I'm not going to have those bumpies in there. And it's completely up to you if you want to zoom in or zoom out, the level of detail you want in your actual walls. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out as I was going along here. Another thing that I need to go over is what to do if you've been tracing around a wall and you come to where you need to join where you started drawing to where you ended drawing. So let me show you how you do that. So I'm going to grab the direct selection tool right here. I'm going to click the very last point on, or the first point or last point where I started and the point where I ended. And I'm going to hold the Shift key down and click on that last point. Now this one is selected and that point is selected, only those two. And you can use the keyboard shortcut, or I think you can come up here too. Let me see if I can find where that is on the menu. Basically, it is join is what you want. Let's do a search here. Join. Path join. There we go. Or Command J. So I'll just do the keyboard shortcut, Command J, and there you go. It's joined together. If it joins together and it's a little wonky, then you can always grab the pencil tool here and then just sort of trace over that line, and it'll give it more of a natural look instead of a sharp edge if it joins together weird. So anyway, that's what you do if you need to join two lines together. Another thing that I'd like to show you how to do is what to do when you've got underline passage. So because this is a pit series, there's going to be segments that are higher up than others. And one of the things I like to do to indicate both underline passage and lower section passage is change the thickness of the line. So visually it looks like it's farther away. if the line is either thinner or if you make it kind of a lighter gray color. So those are some things you can do to make it look farther in distance from the viewer. So I'm going to click on this line. If I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here, you can see this is the underline passage. This is the bottom section of the pit. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to come over to Properties, and then down to the stroke. It's a 2-point stroke. I'm going to change it to a 1-point stroke. I could probably even go, if I wanted to, I could type in 1.5. Maybe 1.5 works a little bit better. Yeah, let's go with 1.5. And then I'm going to split this because the sections that actually go underneath the cave need to be dashed. So now's the time to use our dashed line. So I'm going to grab the scissor tool, if I can find where that is. Let's see, it would be there. That's probably under the eraser. Scissors. Okay. This is going to allow me to cut the line. So I've got the line selected. I need to make sure that I don't hover over this one so that it's highlighted. So I'll just snip it maybe right about... I'll snip it on the inside there, right about there. Okay, this is now cut. Now I need to cut over here. So we'll snip it right there. And now I've got this segment as a segment by itself. So to change this line to a dashed line, I showed you earlier where you do that. Let's go ahead and open the stroke panel. And I'm going to make this a dashed line. That's a little too big. So let's change this to, let's try 6 point. It's a little better. I'm going to go actually even a little smaller. We'll call it 4. Let's see how 4 works. That works great. And if I want to change the space in between that, I could change it to a 4-stroke gap as well. Looks like by default that's what it is. But what if we do 6? Now that makes a bigger gap. I'm pretty happy with pretty much the default. So I'm just going to erase that and leave it blank. And that's good. So now let's close that, and I'll zoom out so you can see what this looks like so far. So go into our layers. I'm going to turn off sketches, unselect that, zoom out just a little bit, and actually let's turn off the survey stations and the line plot as well. So you can see that this is just a little bit thinner. And if you look at it and you're like, I'd like it to even be more thin than that, or maybe what I do is let's set this. One thing we could do, so 2-point is a pretty decently thick line. I want the entrance bit to be like that. That's the highest up part of the pit. And let's click on this and we'll make it, go back to our properties. We'll change that to 1.5. And then we'll change this segment here and this one here to a 1. There we go. So this is the thickest because it's the highest up. And then it works its way down. This is the main trend of the cave. And then the thinnest part down there is the farthest away. I could even, if I wanted to, click on this, click on that, and I can come over here. Let's double click on the stroke, and we'll change that to, I'm going to drag it. Anything along this edge here is going to be gray. So I can drag it down to maybe a kind of a darkish gray. And that also helps it to look a little bit farther away than the rest of the cave. So those are some fun things that you can do. All right, we got the walls done here. Now I just need to work on the walls on the lower section. So let's turn those sketches back on and get sketching.